Sorry about that. It was raining hard enough that I was afraid I was going to lose the first video if I didn't dry everything off. So I dried everything off. Here we go. Okay, so next series of questions. My friend says, at some point in the future, in some unforeseeable way, will we be able to determine what the value of Bitcoin is without the US dollar? Meaning, if the dollar collapses, how do we know the value of Bitcoin? Isn't it always based on the US dollar? The answer is no, but I'll explain. People in Europe see it in euros, but it's based on the value of the dollar, I think. Also wrong. That is not correct. I'll go into that. I'm not saying it's pegged to the dollar. I'm saying that everybody understands it in terms of US dollars, and it has its Bitcoin price dependent on the US dollar and not vice versa. All of that is incorrect. Okay, so, but let me explain why. So the value of anything that is used as money is a proportion of how much of that thing there is as compared to all of the things that could be bought with that thing. So the value of the US dollar is based on how much US dollars you have compared to all the US dollars, and that is what percent of all the stuff that US dollars can buy right now that you have the right to purchase. So quite simply, if there's only 10 US dollars and you hold one of them, you can buy 1/10 of all the stuff that US dollars can buy at that time. If the government inflates it so that there's now $20, you have 1 out of 20, so now you can only buy 5% of the stuff instead of 10%. Okay, so all currencies work that way, and Bitcoin is priced like every good and service in all currencies. So Bitcoin's price stands alone based on its purchasing power, and the reason people look at Bitcoin in terms of US dollars is because they're in the US, and things are priced in US dollars. But the more Bitcoin you own, eventually you start to mentally price things in Bitcoin. So for example, my power in Mississippi is super erratic. I feel like sometimes the power is more stable in third world countries than for whatever reason, than my power when I'm in Mississippi. Okay, so a generator to make my power stay on all the time costs $20,000. A natural gas generator that can run 24/7 for eternity on natural gas and power my house and everything in it costs $20,000. Well, at roughly $100,000 of Bitcoin, that's 1/5 of a Bitcoin. So when I think about buying that generator, although it's priced in US dollars, I think about it in Bitcoin terms. Do I want to spend 1/5 of a Bitcoin on a generator so that my power stops going out? So I'm wrestling with it. I can't decide if I do or don't. What is the value of being able to take a hot shower? What is the value of the air conditioning working? My TV working? My internet working? Now, security systems are on their own backup system, so I'm not worried about that. But everything else that is convenience in my house runs on power. And again, it's as simple as the fact that when the power's out, all the conveniences go away. So is that worth 1/5 of a Bitcoin? And again, that's something I am wrestling with, but I think about it in Bitcoin. Eventually that generator will be priced in Bitcoin, and it'll be worth, Bitcoin will be worth a lot more than it is now, but you'll walk in and it'll say, hey, this generator is 0.05 Bitcoin or 0.1 Bitcoin or 0.0002 Bitcoin, whatever it is. That day will come. So every currency, Bitcoin trades in every currency. Nobody thinks about the price of Bitcoin in the US dollar except people in the US. Everybody else thinks about it in terms of their own currency, but they only think about it that way because that is how their brain processes purchasing power. In the future, that will be in Bitcoin, and people will think about everything the way I do, which is, hey, I want a generator. Is it worth 1/5 of a Bitcoin? And eventually, when it gets down to, hey, I can get, my favorite iced mocha frappe with whipped cream and chocolate drizzle, decaffeinated, that costs $7. Well, eventually that will be priced in Bitcoin, and I'll think about it as, hey, do I want to separate myself from this much Bitcoin in order to have one of those? So the answer is Bitcoin's value is not based on the US dollar at all. It's not based on any currency. It's based on its purchasing power of goods and services, what it can buy in the real world. And when those other currencies eventually go away, presuming they do, then Bitcoin will be, people will think in terms of Bitcoin and price in terms of Bitcoin. And it's not dependent on anything else. Just, again, in the Weimar Republic, when the German mark inflated, into oblivion, it was just based on itself, and people used different currency, or they transacted in gold, or they did other stuff. But no currency is based on another currency's value. They all float, or the vast majority of the currency of the world float freely in value compared to each other, but none of them are based on the value of another. And same is true of Bitcoin. Okay. So this puts forward a thought, which is all of this is based on the fact that Bitcoin will continue to increase in value because people will inject capital into it. Value/capital must be generated to then inject into Bitcoin until there is mass adoption and people buy products and services with Bitcoin, not just paying with Bitcoin. That is an exchange to a currency. So yes, as long as everything's priced in other currencies and most people transact in other currencies, people will continue to trade in and out of Bitcoin for their local currency. But again, that will happen less and less as time goes on. So just like with the Venezuelan bolivar, initially, if you had US dollars, you always had to trade them back into Venezuelan bolivar to buy stuff. And eventually nobody wanted Venezuelan bolivar, so you could just use the US dollars directly in Venezuela because nobody wanted the local currency. And the same is true of Bitcoin. Eventually everybody will want Bitcoin. Nobody will want to be trading in and out of it. Anyway, so that's how that will happen. Another thought here is the person says the exchange fees are worth the cost. I imagine there are some sort of processing fees for foreign transaction types when you pay with Bitcoin or convert into US dollars. So yes, every time you process any transaction anywhere, you're paying some sort of fee. Normally Visa and MasterCard charge 2.9%, which is a super high fee, especially when most merchants are only making a couple percentage points of profit, and half of that, or almost all of that, ends up being eaten up by credit card processing fees. But Bitcoin is the same way, except on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is how payments are typically made. The fees are fractions of a penny. So, and then to trade in and out of fiat currency, which is government currency, there are some transaction fees. Typically, you can get them, if you try hard, as low as 0.4%, or on Coinbase Advanced, for example, or 0.55 on Robinhood, or anyway. So yes, there are fees to trade in and out of US dollars, but those fees get lower and lower with each passing month and year because more people are doing it and the exchanges have to compete with each other. But again, in the future, you won't have to trade in and out of government currency because you'll be able to just directly pay with Bitcoin, which as of yesterday is exactly what you can do at Steak 'n Shake. You can go to Steak 'n Shake and you can buy stuff with Bitcoin at Steak 'n Shake without ever converting in or out of another currency. All right, last episode says the exchange fees are worth the cost. I imagine there will be some sort of processing fee. And then the hypothesis that if I hold money in Bitcoin, that it will be worth more in the future than it is now, and therefore I can buy more stuff with it. All of that is premised on the fact that there is less Bitcoin and it's not inflating. There's only 21 million. Therefore, you can trust its monetary properties, and therefore, over time, it will go up. The credibility of Bitcoin's monetary properties dictate that it will go up in value over time, although it will be volatile. It will go up and down on its way up. The US dollar only goes down. So it feels stable, but that's because it's always sinking. It's just not sinking fast enough that everybody has to jump off the ship immediately. But it is absolutely positively losing value. So anyway, hope all that is helpful. Just some musings on a rainy Saturday afternoon. And I'm free to answer anyone's questions or send me stuff. I'll do videos about them. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.